The Abyss Whispers. Part 1. Consider, if you will, a summer shore in Montauk, 1985, where the sea whispers not of freedom, but of judgment. Gloria Reyes, a scientist of currents, believes the ocean yields to reason. But beneath the waves lies a secret older than sin, born of colonial curses and forbidden rites. In this corner of the unknown, the deep does not forgive. It collects. Week 1, Day 1. The sun hung high over Ditch Plains Beach, casting a golden haze that turned the Long Island Sound into a vast shimmering canvas. Waves lapped at the shore with a rhythmic hush, carrying the faint tang of salt and seaweed, mingling with the distant cries of gulls wheeling overhead. Gloria Reyes waded into the shallows, the cool water swirling around her calves like curious fingers. Her UV probe clutched in one hand as it emitted a soft, insistent hum. At 24, with her dark hair tied back in a practical ponytail and her notebook tucked under her arm, she embodied the quiet determination of a Stony Brook PhD candidate in oceanography. This beach had been her summer laboratory for weeks. The salt air, a bittersweet companion that evoked memories of childhood summers, and the sharper sting of loss, her brother Thomas, vanished in these very waters 7 years prior. His body never recovered, the official verdict a merciless riptide that had swallowed him whole. Science, she told herself, was her bulwark against such chaos, measurable flows, predictable ebbs, data that refused to lie. On the sun-warmed sand a few yards away, her boyfriend Nate Carver lounged amid a loose circle of friends, his lanky frame propped on one elbow, as he sketched idle designs in the margin of a crumpled notebook, gears and pulleys for some half-formed engineering project. Nate was 25, with sun-bleached hair and a perpetual 5 o'clock shadow that made him look boyishly rugged, his easy laugh cutting through the beach's ambient chatter like a lifeline. He was visiting from his own grad program upstate, a weekend escape that Gloria had welcomed with quiet relief. "Hey, Glo, you look like you're plotting world domination with that probe." His voice light and teasing, blue eyes crinkling at the corners. She smiled, sloshing back to the dry sand, her bare feet leaving damp imprints that the tide would soon erase. Hauling her cooler from under a striped umbrella, she popped the lid, the ice rattling like distant thunder. "Here, stay hydrated before you all turn into prunes," she said, tossing cold bottles of water to Nate and their two Stony Brook friends, a pair of grad students named Lena and Mike, who were sprawled on faded towels, slathering sunscreen and debating quantum mechanics. Lena, with her freckled nose and quick wit, caught hers midair. "Mother hen mode activated," she quipped, while Mike, glasses fogging in the heat, murmured a thanks around a mouthful of chips Gloria had offered from a Ziploc bag. The group felt like a fragile bubble of normalcy amid the beach's bustle, families building sandcastles, surfers waxing boards, the air thick with coconut lotion and grilled hot dogs from a nearby vendor. Nate pulled her down beside him, his hand warm on her knee. "Race to the boy later? Loser buys ice cream." Before Gloria could reply, a local swimmer caught her eye, mid-30s, burly with a faded anchor tattoo snaking up his forearm, his strokes powerful, and assured as he cut through the gentle swell toward the red buoy 50 yards offshore. The marker bobbed like a sentinel, delineating the shallows from the drop-off, where the continental shelf plunged abruptly into the shadowy abyss of the Sound. Gloria's probe registered the current's subtle tug, a familiar undercurrent that could turn treacherous without warning. "Careful out there," she called half-heartedly, her voice lost in the wind, but the man waved back, slapping the buoy with a triumphant whoop that echoed faintly over the water. The air shifted then, imperceptibly at first, a thickening like a prelude to a storm, the gulls falling silent as if sensing an unseen predator. Gloria's probe beeped erratically, its screen flickering with anomalous readings. Spikes in salinity, a low-frequency vibration, humming through the water like the growl of some subterranean beast. The chants began, faint as the rustle of dry leaves, resolving into words that slithered into her mind. "Thou art judged. Thou art judged." They weren't spoken aloud, not yet, but felt in the marrow, an ancient verdict from a courtroom long buried. The swimmer froze midway back, his arms locking mid-stroke. His scream erupted, not the sharp yelp of a cramp, but a guttural wail of primal terror, raw and echoing, as if dragged from the throat of a man confronting his own damnation. The crowd on the beach stirred, heads turning, but no one moved. No fin sliced the surface, no shadow of a great white loomed. The water remained pristine, a flawless azure unbroken by blood or foam. Gloria dropped her probe into the sand, the device sinking slightly as she sprinted to the water's edge and dove in, the cold shock enveloping her like a shroud. Nate's shout, "Glow, wait!" faded behind her as she kicked hard, arms slicing the surface, salt burning her eyes. The murk deepened near the buoy, sunlight fracturing into shafts that danced like mocking specters. Through the blur she saw it, a hand rising from the inky depths, not the broad flipper of a seal, not the ragged fin of a shark, but something demonic forged in the fires of forbidden lore. 6 elongated fingers, webbed with translucent membrane veined in bioluminescent threads, ended in curved talons sharp as obsidian shards. Etched along their length were runes, ancient Enochian script, pulsing with a sickly glow like embers in wet ash, casting eerie shadows that writhed against the man's thrashing legs. The hand clamped his ankle with inexorable force, the talons piercing fabric and flesh without a spray of crimson, yanking him downward in a silent, fluid motion. His eyes met Gloria's for a suspended heartbeat, wide with the horror of revelation, pleading for a mercy that would never come before the abyss claimed him utterly, the water closing over his head like a velvet curtain drawn on a final act. She surfaced, lungs burning, treading water as her gaze raked the empty expanse. The buoy swayed gently, mocking her with its indifference, the surface smooth as polished glass. Nate reached her, his strokes frantic, hauling her toward shore. What the hell was that glow, Riptide? Cramp. The crowd had gathered now, a semicircle of wide eyes and hushed speculation, the air thick with the scent of sunscreen and unease. Shark! A sunburned tourist declared, his voice quivering with authority born of half-remembered documentaries. Great white. Saw one off Block Island last year, big as a truck. Gloria staggered onto the sand, coughing seawater, her skin prickling with the chill that had nothing to do with the wind. No, she said, her voice raw, shaking her head as if to dislodge the image. A hand talons glowing runes. It grabbed him like it knew him. Caleb Vance rowed over from his skiff, the psalmist, the boat's weathered hull bobbing low in the water, its gunwales etched with faded carvings of biblical verses, Psalm 23 prominent among them, a talisman against the deep's cruelties. At 40, Caleb cut a figure of quiet menace, his broad shoulders straining a faded navy cap, his eyes shadowed by the ghosts of 1982, when the hybrids had claimed his SEAL team in a dive gone catastrophically wrong off Plum Island. He shipped his oars with a creak, his calloused hands steady. No blood in the water, he said, his voice a low gravel rumble that carried over the lap of waves. He paused, gazed distant, then quoted softly, Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Psalm 23. Sharks leave chum trails, red ribbons in the blue. This, clean as a confessional, deep took him whole. Nate wrapped an arm around Gloria's shoulders, his touch grounding but his face pale, brows furrowed in concern. A shadow maybe glow. The sun hits the water weird, makes tricks. Rosa Delgado arrived by 1 p.m., her unmarked sedan crunching over the gravel lot, her trench coat flapping like a tattered flag in the onshore breeze. At 38, she moved with the rumpled efficiency of a detective who'd seen too many Long Island summers turn sour, her dark hair pulled into a no-nonsense bun, a Winston cigarette dangling from her lips as she twirled a Bic pen like a fidget toy. She scanned the crowd with sharp eyes that missed nothing, the abandoned towels, the scattered flip-flops, the way the water lapped innocently at the shore. Name of the missing swimmer? She asked, flipping open a battered notepad, her voice carrying the faint queen's lilt of someone who'd clawed her way up from patrol. Gloria recounted the incident, her words tumbling out in a rush, the demonic hand vivid in her mind's eye, the way the runes had throbbed like a heartbeat, the talons glinting with an inner malice. Rosa nodded slowly, exhaling a plume of smoke that curled toward the sky. Just one thing, Miss Reyes' talons. Glowing? Like a monster from one of those Spielberg flicks? Not human, Gloria insisted, her hands trembling as she wrapped them around her knees. Not a shark. It was deliberate. Caleb leaned on his oar, water dripping from the blade. Lieutenant, no foam, no disturbance. Like 82 off Plum, my team gone in a blink. Quoted Psalm 69 then too. Save me, O God, for the waters are come in unto my soul. No bodies, no blood. Rosa's pen paused mid-scribble, her squint deepening. Plum Island? That's USDA turf, foot and mouth disease in cows, not sea gremlins. Stay in town, all of you. We'll drag the bottom come morning. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, painting the sky in strokes of bruised purple and orange, Gloria and Nate drove back to her bungalow in Setauket, the radio murmuring weather reports of clear skies ahead. Nate's hand rested on her thigh, a silent reassurance, but his voice was tight. It's probably a medical thing, heart attack, panic. The light plays tricks, Glow. You know that. Her charts, spread on the kitchen table that night under the harsh glow of a single bulb, told a different story. Eddies spiraling unnaturally from Plum Island, 2 miles offshore, a forbidden rock of labs and secrecy, its barbed wire silhouette a constant shadow on her data. Sleep came in fits, the room heavy with the scent of sea air seeping through the cracked window, haunted by the echo of chance. Thou art judged. Week 1, Day 3. The armed dawn broke with a pallor that leached color from the dunes, the tide pulling back like a conspirator retreating from a crime. Old man Sully shuffled along the high water line at Ditch Plains, his collie Rufus trotting ahead, the dog's paws kicking up sprays of damp sand that glittered like crushed diamonds in the weak light. At 65, Sully's frame was bent by decades of Montauk winters, his face a map of wrinkles etched by wind and whiskey, his mind a repository of tales from his grandmother whispers of John Ketchum, the Salem exile who'd fled the witch trials in 1692, only to desecrate Shinnecock burial ground with rites that bound demonic forces to the soil, cursing Amityville for generations. Rufus barked sharply, digging with frantic paws into the wet sand, unearthing something pale and slick that caught the first rays of sun. Sully's stomach lurched, an arm human severed at the elbow, the skin pallid and waterlogged, fingers curled in a final, futile grasp. No tattoos marred the flesh, no jewelry to aid identification, but the wound was grotesque, not ragged from teeth or jagged from rock, but torn with surgical precision, the bone splintered yet cleanly sheared as if by talons of superhuman strength. The edges wept a viscous ooze melted and corroded like flesh kissed by acid, no trace of congealed blood to stain the sand. Lord have mercy, Sully rasped, his voice cracking as he fumbled for the payphone at the parking lot, the receiver cold against his ear. Rosa Delgado arrived by 9 a.m., her sedan kicking up gravel, the morning mist still clinging to the beach like a shroud. She lit her Winston with a Zippo's click, the flame briefly illuminating her sharp features, and twirled her Bic pen as she knelt by the fine, gloved hands bagging the arm with clinical detachment. Dog turns up gold again, she muttered to the uniform beside her, but her eyes narrowed at the unnatural severance, the way the flesh seemed to dissolve at the margins, as if the wound was still active, eating away in slow motion. The air held a faint acrid tang like ozone after light, mingling with the brine. By noon, the arm lay on Dr. Marcus Tate's autopsy table in Riverhead, the room a sterile cathedral of stainless steel and humming fluorescence, the air sharp with formalin, and the faint metallic bite of blood. At 34, Marcus moved with the obsessive precision of a man who saw patterns where others saw chaos, his gloves snapping on with a rubbery echo, his lab coat pristine over a button-down that hid the tattoos of a former CDC analyst who dissected outbreaks from Ebola to engineered plagues. He leaned over the microscope, the arm's flesh magnified into a landscape of cellular ruin, fibers frayed but not serrated, enzymes bubbling at the edges like a chemical reaction caught mid-boil. No bite radius whatsoever, Marcus said into his recorder, his voice even clinical as a scalpel's edge. He switched to the phone for Rosa, the line crackling faintly. Sheer force equivalent to thousands of pounds per square inch, industrial press level. A whale might crush bone, but you'd see fluke imprints, bruising patterns. Shark? Absolutely not. Their teeth leave interlocking serrations, like a zipper of wounds. This corrosion, it's enzymatic, aggressive as viperfish toxin, but amplified, dissolving tissue post-mortem. The tears too precise, Lieutenant. Deliberate, superhuman. Rosa paced her cramped office back in Montauk, the pen twirling faster between her fingers, the smoke from her cigarette curling toward a ceiling fan that wheezed like an asthmatic. Just one thing, Tate humanoid. Like a diver with a grudge, Marcus hesitated, peering at a slide of the ooze. The precision suggests intent, ritualistic even. No known predator matches. Send more samples if they wash up. Gloria received the tip from Nate's contact at the precinct. A hurried call that had her pulling on jeans and a hoodie, driving the winding roads to Montauk PD by 2 p.m., the coastal fog rolling in like a living thing. Rosa met her in a dim interview room, the air stale with coffee and cigarette ash, photos of the arm pinned to a corkboard under harsh light, the pallid skin, the splintered bone gleaming white, the melted edges glistening like wax under a flame. This your handwork, Reyes? Rosa asked, tapping a photo, her squint softening with a hint of empathy. Gloria leaned in, stomach churning at the detail, the way the corrosion seemed to creep, as if the wound breathed. The talons, they could tear like that. The glow, maybe venom, dissolving on contact. The door creaked open, and Caleb Vance entered, his boots leaving sandy prints, his logbook tucked under one arm like a Bible. The floods have lifted up, O Lord. The floods have lifted up their voice, he quoted. Psalm 93 rumbling from his chest like a ward against the room's chill. Plum Island 82, those hands took my team in the dark. No blood, no wreckage. Just this kind of tear, clean as judgment. Rosa's pen paused, her eyes flicking between them. Vance, plums for livestock plagues, not biblical boogeymen. Spill it, what's your angle? Before Caleb could answer, Dr. Ezra Hawthorne stepped through the door, 45 and austere, his tweed jacket dusted with the red clay of recent digs, a narrow Congregationalist collar peeking from his shirt like a Puritan's vow. Pastor Lee had summoned him from a site near Amityville, where he'd unearthed Ketchum's grimoire, a leather-bound relic yellowed with age, its pages scented faintly of damp earth and ink that seemed to shift under light. Ezra's face was lined with the quiet fervor of a man who'd stared into history's abyss, his gray eyes sharp as flint striking fire. He studied the photos, his finger tracing an invisible rune in the air, the motion deliberate, almost reverent. This is the tear of judgment, he said softly, his voice carrying the measured cadence of a sermon. John Ketchum, exiled from Salem's hysteria in 1692, settled on sacred Shinnecock ground in 1685, a natural seal for Nephilim bones. The fallen giants God drowned in the flood to purge their corruption, as chronicled in Enoch. Ketchum's Enochian rites, pilfered from John Dee's angelic scrying, cracked that seal. The abyssal essence wept into the soil, cursing Amityville with whispers and shadows that seeped to the aquifers, flowing east to the sound. Rosa's pen resumed its twirl, smoke curling from her lips. Nephilim? Bible giants? I'm half Catholic, Doc. Demons are a stretch for a Tuesday shift. But this arm, explained the melt. Ezra laid the grimoire on the scarred table, its cover embossed with faded sigils that seemed to writhe under the fluorescent glare. He opened it to a brittle page, the ink dark as congealed blood, illustrations of multi-limbed seraphim twisting in chains. Plum Island's Project Abyss, launched in 1983 under DARPA's black budget, excavated that tainted shard from bogs near the cursed house. They spliced its demon DNA, the Nephilim's primal code, with marine genomes from squid and viperfish, using unwilling human subjects as incubators. The goal, amphibious super soldiers to dominate sea lanes. But the storm of 84 breached containment, releasing hybrids into the deep. They don't merely kill. They judge, dissolving the unworthy with paralytic venom, feeding on the fear that echoes our sins, like the spectral accusations in Goody Garlick's 1657 East Hampton trial, where she was accused of conjuring water spirits that dragged the innocent under. Gloria's charts unrolled beside the photos, aligned cruelly. Swirling eddies originating from Plum's coordinates, timestamps matching Toma's disappearance in 1978, perhaps an early leak, a prototype abomination testing the waters. My brother's case, she said, voice steady but eyes burning. The currents match, if this is connected. Nate, who'd been waiting in the hall with coffee cups, poked his head in, his face a mask of skepticism. Folklore glow, sharks and riptides explain the rest. This occult stuff, it's a distraction. The room's drain gurgled suddenly, a wet rasp that made them all freeze, the faint chant rising like steam. Thou art judged. Rosa stubbed her cigarette, pen still. One more thing. Anyone else hearing that?